when we thought about the presentation for tonight, we're like, what do we name it? We actually had a different name up until I think late this morning. And we thought that the theme of being Watchmen was fitting for tonight because what we've seen over the last year, ripped from the headlines, our daily newsletter is actually a year old this month. And what we've seen over the last year, we've really kind of been thrust into that position as Watchmen to make sure that you guys know what's going on and you can interpret all the stuff that's flying at you. So in this presentation today, we're going to go through some of that, but we're going to try to get through that as quickly as possible because we want to leave a lot of room for the action steps and solutions, because there are those solutions. And as Juliana always loves to say, we want to have a community conversation about that.
Yep.
Sound good?
Awesome.
Yeah, you guys are welcome to stop us if you have a question. We may defer it till later, but you're free. If you have a question on something, you can ask. One other ask before we get started, please put your phones on silent. First fine, 75, second fine's 375. All fines go to the Give Foundation, which is our nonprofit. Thank you. Awesome. All right. I bet all the phones are going to go on silent now, right? So welcome, guys. And we can't think of a better way to welcome our friends than with a disclaimer.
Oh.
We have an orphan phone. Natalie, friends helping friends, because she knows I'm serious about the fine. So we can't think of a better way to welcome our friends than with a disclaimer. So the short version of this is what you're seeing tonight is for informational and educational purposes only. Don't go off and do anything crazy. And in the event you do, don't blame us. Sound good? Awesome. Let's do this.
Hi, I'm Juliana.
And I'm RC. I think you guys do that. So we are co-founders of a market research and decision intelligence company called Sherloc. We'll get to exactly what that means in a minute, but I can tell you guys that over the years, when we met, we were both consulting and we specialized in competitive intelligence. Generally speaking, the thing that people don't want you to know is what we find out.
Exactly.
And we're able to make all of that make sense. So a couple of things that we've done over the years, we accurately predicted Trump's election in 2016 and also Brexit going in the yes direction.
Mm-hmm.
We accurately predicted the Supreme Court ruling on online sports gambling in the United States, and 5 out of the 6 companies that would win in that scenario. And a couple of them have actually bought each other. So anybody that took that advice a couple years ago made out like a bandit. We also predicted SiriusXM's acquisition of Pandora a year before it happened. So we're all right in the track record here. I think we got it. So a bit about our publications, Juliana's going to share with you.
So rip the headlines. We are pulling 3 different headlines every single day, 5 days a week, and we're talking about what does this really mean for you. You know, people don't have time to go searching, looking for the most important things that are happening in the day. So we aggregate all those things and talk about what it means to you. And then with We Are The Watchmen Weekly, we're talking about really important things and we're adding scripture to it because we really believe that the church needs to see what's happening out in the real world.
Yeah. So what we did for you guys on here, you'll notice there are no website addresses up there. Here's what we found in practice. And here's a tip for you if you ever talk to someone about something. What we figured out is that it's really hard for people to do that in real time. So we just figured we'd tell you what to search for. If you go to Google, the NSA search engine or your preferred engine of choice, and you type in these things for either one, will come up at the top. That way you found us, right? Make sense? Okay, that's a pro tip for you out of the gate. So 3 areas we're going to cover tonight. We're going to break this into sections of 3. We'll try to make it as easy on you as possible. The first one, who we are and what we do, okay? Part 2, we're going to talk about a year of impact. So this is the last year ripped from the headlines. And we're going to share a couple of scenarios with you guys because we think it's important that you understand how we do what we do so that when you're out in the world and we're not around, or maybe there's something we haven't covered, you guys know what you're looking for and you're able to get through the weeds to make the right decision.
Also with history, we can start looking at from behind the history, what we can start seeing forward, because all the things that we've been predicting, now it's like, okay, what's coming up next?
Yeah. And then in the last part, we'll talk about action steps. I know that you guys see a lot of presentations. People talk about the problem. They don't spend a whole lot of time on the solution because they don't have one. They're trying to get you to buy the problem. or whatever they're hawking in order to solve the problem, which they don't actually do. So we'll cover those 3 areas in the presentation today. All right, so Juliana, you want to share our mission?
To increase your probability of success by helping you gain and maintain a competitive edge with Sherloc Decision Intelligence.
So our business runs very parallel to what we do with the public. We work with businesses directly. Our mission is the same, whether it's them or you.
Right.
We want to make sure you know if there's a gold mine or a landmine. So we're glad you asked.
What is decision intelligence? Your key to the castle to really understanding what it is that you need to know to be the smartest person in the room with the 3 levels of knowing. So I always talk about those 3 levels of knowing. This is actually our value proposition. 3 levels of knowing. There's you know that you know, great, or at least you think that you know. There's you know that you don't know, but you need to figure it out, but you know that you could ask somebody, you can ask Google. And then there's the most important area, which is the you don't know, but you don't know that you really need to know. And that is where people get into trouble, because when you're trying to think about, I need to come up with the strategy, right? You need to know the things that you didn't know that you needed to know. Most people are like looking at us going, we don't even know what questions to ask. Exactly. We'll help you formulate some questions so we can start getting some of the answers that you need to have.
So you guys, before we move on here, you guys actually sit in a pretty unique. Oh, yeah, baby. We're getting close to opening a new lab. There's another pie in the kitty. Just kidding, Brian. Kind of.
No, I'm serious.
Kind of.
That's right.
Oh, I'm charging him. Oh no, I was just joking. No. I said I'm letting off the hook. Just kidding. No, I'm not letting off the hook. So I know where he works. I know who his boss is, so we're good.
We'll deduct it from his paycheck.
There you go. Right? It's like I know where you work. So what I was going to share, guys, is you sit in a pretty unique place. This almost looks like Pac-Man eating something, right? So the majority of people in the country today sit in that big part of the pie.
Yep.
Many of you that subscribe and those of you who are here tonight are actually going to sit in one of the other 2, right? Because you're already knowledgeable of some of this stuff. And as you walk away from this tonight and you use it in your daily life, the really good news is that you're going to be able to pull people out of the Pac-Man side and into the other parts with you. And that's what we want to see coming out of this presentation tonight. So let's get to it. A year ripped from the headlines. I will share with you guys that the last year has been interesting to say the least, right? I think everybody would agree. Some ups, some downs. Yeah, okay. So we get asked about this. People say, can you sum the last year up in pictures? And so we found 2 images that we think actually do that. So there's the first one.
Poor George.
We've used Sad Uncle George in other presentations, but it's like when I get up and you look in your wallet or you're watching TV or whatever, that's kind of sums up how you feel. It's a rough day when Uncle George is sad, right? So that's one. The other one is one that we used. We did a tour last year talking about parallel economies. We did 6 cities last year with a group that specialized in different areas. And this article really stuck out to us, and it became a teaching tool that actually spurred large parts of this presentation. So this is from February of 2022, but I want you guys to look closely at the headline, and then I'm going to have a question for you. And if you've seen this before, no cheating. Okay, got it. So notice the headline: inflation will be worse this year, Goldman Sachs predicts. So we have a saying in our company, Sherloc as a mascot is a girl. It is modeled off of Juliana. And what we say is when the bomb diffuser lady is running, you ever heard that joke? You should probably keep up. When the bomb diffuser is running and saying there's something going on, you should probably keep up. Here's a question for you guys. What do you think the most important word in that sentence is?
Will. It will happen.
So this headline, when you think about it, right, we did another presentation that came out that's called Words Matter, where we went into the origin of words. Everybody know the origin of the word mortgage? Agreement till death. So, right? Okay. So, yeah, but it's death pledge, basically is what it translates to. So understanding that when Goldman Sachs says that something is going to happen, there's a pretty good indication that they've already put things into motion to make that happen, right? So that leads to our first pro tip in being a Sherlock level researcher. Pay attention to what they do and what they say, right? because what they say often tips their hand to what they'll do.
Yep.
But like many people do normally, they glance over the headline, they say Goldman Sachs said something on CNN, I don't care about either, I'm moving on. Yet that has a direct impact on your financial future and the economics of your home, doesn't it? Right? All of these things matter. When we get a bit later in the presentation, literally, we had different stuff put together. I just simply took the headlines from today to show you guys what a year looks like and where we're at. It all matters. Big tip, really important, and you guys will see it make more sense in this presentation. Okay. So let's take a look at the central bank digital currency takeover. I know you guys are all excited about CBDC, right? Come on, you guys aren't excited about CBDC and the government taking over your life? Shame on you. I'm not either. All right, so here was their goal with the central bank digital currency, to kill your economic freedom. You guys haven't heard this before. Central bank digital currency is basically programmable money. So today, you want to pay someone in cash, you can do that. You got a goat, you want a sheep, you guys can exchange, right? Central bank digital currency says, no, 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 no. No, no. All your money's digital, and when we feel like you've been a bad citizen, one too many beers, had milk last week, no soup for you. You simply can't spend it. Or if they want to incentivize you to spend it, and you say no, so let's say Jeanette's a saver, right? She's smart, good with money. She's like, no, I'm going to save. I save a lot, right? Well, they say, no, look, you need to do this. And she says, no, they say, we're going to tax you or penalize you 20% every day until you do what we say. Yeah.
Behavior modification.
Behavior modification. So that was the goal. Here was the plan. Plant a story and grow a weed. Normally you would see the word seed there, but weed is there for a reason. And when we show it to you, it'll make a lot of sense. So this was the goal and remains the goal with CBDC. And here's the plan, and they keep trying to do it. So here was the story. Back in December, we were actually on assignment in Atlanta for the special election with Herschel Walker. And a story broke on Bloomberg with this headline, and the majority of the world missed it.
Yep. Huge,
missing, and growing. And the number was actually 80 trillion. They got it wrong. $80 trillion in debt sparks concerns. Here's the short version of the story. This happened December 5th, right? And I want you to keep in mind the letters BIS. That's the Bank for International Settlements. That's the central bank of central banks, okay? The BIS did a report on this, right? They said there's a hidden risk to the global financial system. I want you guys to keep that in mind, okay? Come back to it in a second, right? Then they said in their own research paper, they basically didn't know where $80 trillion was. Let that sink in for a second. The central bank of central banks, which if they wanted to get that dollar out of Dan's bank account, the BIS could find it, right? But all of a sudden 80 trillion goes missing off of balance sheets and they have no idea where it went.
But honestly, let's talk about, are we any of us shocked about that?
So you're probably, so at the end of the day, the Federal Reserve in large part reports to the BIS. All the central banks do, right? So think about this for a second. The organization that is responsible for policing and knowing these types of things puts out a report in their research that says they don't know where it is. You guys see where this is going now? Right? Plant a story, grow a weed, starting to make sense? Okay, so let's move on. Here's what we did. This story was so big, we actually ran a story at midnight on January 6th. And in this video, we spend 10.5 minutes. It is on from the headlines, breaking down what's going on, including what derivatives are. Bundle up a bunch of stuff, whether it's good or bad, package up, sell it to somebody else. That's what got us in trouble in 2008, by the way. Okay, so we broke down what was going on, and this guy, Augustin Carstens, so he is the general manager for the Bank for International Settlements, right? And what we said is, isn't it interesting that this is happening? It's almost like what they want to say is, look, 80 trillion is missing. Doesn't that scare you? You know what we really need? We need a centralized digital currency so that you're safe. The weed is fear and confusion, or as our friend Alex Newman always says, the polycrisis, right? Let me keep you in so much crisis, you know it's going. So we wouldn't leave you guys hanging. We had to show you so you could hear it in your own words. So here's Slim telling you the story himself in a minute.
All our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash. And there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also we will have the technology to enforce that. Those two issues are extremely important, and that makes a huge difference with respect to what cash is.
Wow. Sure sounds like, you guys familiar with the Hegelian dialect? Cloward and Piven, problem, reaction, solution. So they made their own case for why you should be scared enough to think a central bank digital currency is a good idea. These are the same people who their sole job is to keep an eye on central banks to make sure things like $80 trillion doesn't go missing. And for some reason, they couldn't do it. Interesting, right? So let's take a look at how that's going. Then I'll come to your question, Roy. Hang on. So you guys are probably asking, well, how's it going? RC, Julianna, you figured this out months ago. How's it going since you've been sounding the horn? I'll show you. The Fed launches a new payment system that lets you send money in seconds. The first round of CBDC runs was a Trojan horse for a program called FedNow. Here's how it works. The Fed does an incredibly bad job managing banking. Would you all agree? If Leo was going to write us a check for consulting and he gave it to us business to business, we put that check in the bank, it'd probably take 10 to 14 days because banks hold money because, well, they suck, right? So being honest, we're friends, right? We can talk about it. Well, what the Fed has said is that let's take all that out of the way. If Leo writes you a check, you put it in the bank, it's instantly available. Now, we know that the federal government of the United States has historically done bad with matters of finance, right? I'd say 30 trillion plus in debt's a pretty bad job of managing the books. But now they're telling you that this technology and this system can make all transactions instant.
If they want it to be instant, if they want the transaction to actually happen.
So let's look at what happened. They got you scared with the CBDC and everything, right? But then they made a potential solution as sweet as pie. You know you hate the banks. You know it hates too long. You hate waiting for your money, right? We can solve it for you. So here's what's going to happen next. Now, this is implemented. All the major banks are already doing this. It hasn't quite trickled down to you yet, but they got them launched at the end of July. So this is already a thing. Here's what they're going to do. They're going to make it so sweet that you say, you know, maybe they're not so bad after all. Maybe the government's got it together enough to get me my money fast. Sounds good. Then there's going to be a crisis where they say, you know what? The banks aren't stable. Would you agree? The only way we can solve this is if we centralize the operations. We've already shown you that we can solve the problem. This is why it's dangerous. Yep. This is how it's going. Okay, so you understand what a CBDC is now, right? You understand how they got the Trojan, they got it in as a Trojan horse and slipped this one by you, right? You understand now that they can come back around and programmable money is only one crisis away from being a reality. You guys look somber. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. It is reality. Yeah. That's all right. We're going to get to the solutions later. We want to make sure you guys understand the magnitude of the problem so that you take action on the solutions. What happens a lot of the time is that people go through something like this and the issue isn't magnified to the point where they take it seriously enough to take an action. We want to get you guys there tonight. Okay. So how to become a Sherloc level researcher. Tip 2, read between the lines and figure out who gains. Because I'll tell you something, the majority of the time, if the government or somebody else is involved, it ain't you.
That's right.
When you understand the end game, you can reverse engineer and figure out how you work around it or where there's an advantage for you. Always read between the lines. We just went through an entire exercise with CBDC, didn't we? You guys understanding how to read between the lines now? Understanding who gains from a situation like that. We all good? Nobody wants to jump?
What are the questions?
Go ahead, Roy.
The main goal is dictatorship.
Yep. Yep.
Total dictatorship.
Control.
Not control.
There are a lot of things against the Constitution, Roy. They keep doing them. Jeff and Dan can probably attest to that better than most. They're out there trying to heal people, and they got them on a. They're going to put them on a no-knock list in a minute. Like, God bless them, right?
They don't talk about the Declaration.
Oh, of course. The Constitution is written in such a way that we govern ourselves. The only problem is we're not doing it. That's how we got here. All right.
Amen.
Amen. So the Masters of Grift, this one's fun, and we'll keep rolling. But what I want to show you guys, the goal with this was to keep you distracted from economic failure. And this goes into our State of the Economy reports. I'll share this more in a second. The plan was to use media minions and play a shell game with you. You guys ever been to the boardwalk and played the shell game where they have the ball under the shells and they roll around? You guys realize that the ball is long gone. So no matter which shell you pick, you're going to lose. You guys understand how that works, right? Okay, good. So, story was, people kept asking us, what should I be looking out for? What should I do? What shouldn't I do? How does this work? So we started a State of the Economy report series, about 7 or 8 pages, where we break down the state of things in a quarter and we tell you what's coming in the next one. So this started in Q1 2023, and we found out something interesting right off the bat. We have a market research technology we built called Parable. Don't worry about all the words on the screen. I'm going to give you the 5-second description. In essence, we can tell where a topic sits with people and how they feel about it, and we get very nuanced with the emotions. So you guys will notice we figured out how people feel about it. They're obviously upset about the economy. The topic is perpetual, but then when we looked at the negative, that big red arc is all negative. And the arrow is pointing at the word horror. Things you don't want to hear about your economy. Horror or anxiety or things like that, right? So we discovered this part, we kept digging. Here's what came out in the report. The US economy is being driven by narratives that kill everyday investors because the people who are doing it, your interests don't align. They don't give a crap about you, they give a crap about them, right? So what's happening is you've got corporate media networks working together with big business and government for their agenda. You ever notice that you seem to be the last one to know about everything? Oh man, how come I know that business is going to go out of business? Because if you'd have known that, you'd put all your money out. And you'd have called 5 friends and told them to pull their money out. You can't grift if there's no money to grift. So as an average investor, you're the one who gets left holding the bag. That's basically what we shared, right? So this is what we talked about. Our economy right now is just a series of highly leveraged debt instruments. That's why they keep printing money, and they keep owing. If you guys have not visited usdebtclock.org, I strongly encourage you to visit it on a regular basis so that you can see just how much fun we're having. That money ain't never getting paid back. I'm just telling you, 32 trillion is a lot of money. It ain't. Okay. So what we also discovered, and we dug in, is that the really scary part is some of the media minions they're using. Everybody know who Jim Cramer is? Okay, thank you all for, okay, awesome. But they are using people like Jim Cramer, who hasn't been right since the birth of Jesus. Never mind. It's been a long time. To push this, and people are actually paying a premium for his advice.
Yep.
And that's really, really scary. You may be asking how scary. It was scary enough that the week before Silicon Valley Bank went under, Cramer was telling people it was a good investment. Right? That's Jim Cramer in all his glory. You guys know he used to own a website called thestreet.com. So he sold it to NBC for $15 million. Made out like a bandit. Now he's just grifting on the regular. And he gets people to pay him $75 a month for his inside tips. And if I wanted to commit suicide, I'd just go jump over the rail. But it's just me. Okay. So you may want to know how it's going, right? Well, as I told you guys that we just pulled from today, these were the headlines that we pulled from the headlines today. Here's how it's going. U.S. bank shares drop as Moody's cuts ratings on banks. Banks are in trouble. Right?
Yeah.
Americans are pulling money out of 401ks and accelerated at an alarming rate. And credit card balances jumped to the largest in history. That's today. So tip number 3, know your foe. Guys, understanding clearly who the enemy is really important. Anyone that has an agenda that appears to run counter to your benefit is not in the business of helping you outside of extracting money from you for them. Kramer would not sit in the seat and tell you guys the truth because his interests don't align with yours. He needs as much of your money as possible for his handlers so they can do what they need to do. So I'm going to give you guys an inside tip. We've been asked about this a lot, and people have asked us to simplify. How do I figure out what's coming from the players in the game? Anybody read the Financial Times of London? Anybody familiar with this? You guys aren't? Okay. So if you go to the site, it's ft.com. You can get 4 weeks for $1. Believe it or not, the richest people in the world say, hey, you want to read? Because they figure most people will figure it out. The Financial Times is how power brokers around the world communicate their moves with each other. And I thought today's headline was fitting, which is why I highlighted it. So the big read on the main page was the new commodity superpowers. Precious metals, other important items. I promise you, if you read that article thoroughly, you will know what companies and things are going to be in play and in which countries. And then if you turn on CNBC in the next 2 days, you will see the people who are told to go tell you things that are counter to this. That's how the game works, guys. I'm sorry it's not some long financial formula. It's common sense and elbow grease, and this room is full of people who understand that. But you got to know the tools. Once you know your foe and you know how they operate, you can turn the cannon the other way. Make sense? How we doing? You guys all right? I know you've probably seen better days, but this is how it goes, right? All right. So let's talk solutions. All right. This is the part that we really wanted to get to. Before we move into this, I want to preface it by saying that we are no longer in a place where you can allow someone else to solely take action on your behalf. I don't care how mature and tenured you are or not. You no longer have the luxury of not paying attention. These solutions are tangible. We've talked about them in the past, and God bless Catherine Austin Fitts. Have you guys heard of Catherine Austin Fitts? Yeah. She is amazing. And at the end here, we'll give you guys a link. She has created a series of solutions in a PDF where she goes into great detail about the things that you need to do. We're going to share the high levels in this presentation, and then at the end, we'll give you guys a link where you can get the whole thing along with a bunch of other stuff. But it's so refreshing to see someone going out, taking the lead, especially with her experience and tenure. We reference her often in the work that we do because she's very good at what she does. So with that said, here's how it breaks down. There are different levels and categories, and it starts with you and your family. So when we looked at what Catherine put together, her top 3 really kind of aligned with ours, and here they are. You have to build real asset resiliency. So Patricia, we were talking with her before we started today, and she was talking about real tangible assets. Sounds practical. I think everyone in the room kind of gets that. We're all pretty like-minded, but you have to take this seriously. This is that part again, where you can't read it and then put it in your back pocket and go on with your life. You are pretty much out of extra days to take action. If you'll recall the headlines from today, banks are downgraded, 401ks are dead, right? And credit card debt is at a record. Something has to give, which means you need to be prepared. I think everyone understands these are practical. Food, energy, shelter, right? Stock up on non-perishables. Take a look at 2 and 3 though. How often in your day do you just pop out the card and go?
I was watching a video today from somebody in Australia, and they wanted to do a week-long boycott of any credit cards, do everything in cash, and see what happens to the economy. What happens to businesses if we say, you know what, as a country, we're not going to use our credit cards, only cash.
You guys may have noticed when you go to certain stores, they give you a cash price and a credit price. Gas stations have been doing that for a long time, but now actual stores are starting to do that. Here's an easy one. Somebody said 10, they used the card 10 times. Try cutting that to 5. And then when you have to buy something, go to a locally owned store and pay cash. It's like a habit, right? We say it takes 21 days to build a habit.
Right.
Try cutting that amount of card use in half and then go locally and buy something in cash. Or write them a check, right? Because they save on the fees,
right,
and they'll appreciate you for doing it. Baby steps. Now,
instead of going to Whole Foods, who now wants to start the palm scanners.
ooh, yeah. The third one, the technology thing's a little tough for us, as you guys can probably imagine, but it's real. You know what they say sometimes? It's like, yeah, I can send you a text, but it'd be great if I just came over to visit you. That's a thing, right? And any time that we don't cede room to the enemy, we win.
Well, I also think what number 3 is, as a people, as a community, as a church, you know, it's time for us to get together and do what we need to do as a people. And if we're distracted with our phones, with frivolous stuff, we're not doing what we need to do to be prepared. Because I know that as a community, as a part of a person in the community, I don't feel prepared. My community is not ready. We need to be ready. Yeah, we do. It's true.
The Amish and the Mormons are going to be the only people that survive at the end, right? It's like a bad video game. Okay. I'm just kidding. Anybody that's Amish or Mormon, I apologize. Occasionally I get off a good one-liner. Okay, so we got individual and family down, right? Let's look at the next step. This is where you grow a little bit. So small groups, we're talking about your neighborhood or a group of people that you know, right? Now, the Solari Circle, Catherine Austin Fitt's company is called Solari Investments. She's tenured, she knows what she's doing. Okay, look at what she's saying here because it's interesting. This is that change of habit that we were talking about. Many of you have been set up with your investments and maybe now you're living on those because you're retired. You're going to have to shift your thinking if you're going to stop feeding the beast. If you can form investment clubs and other vehicles for local investing, you're eating your own soup. How many of you have a retirement fund or whatever? Anybody? It's fine. Raise your hand. Not, that's fine too. Do you know who invests it for you? Is it Vanguard? You should probably stop that right now. Yeah, you should probably stop that right now. Or if you do nothing else, go and be really, really annoying. So who's handling that for me? What are they invested in? Why are they invested in it? Why can't I make my own choices? Those people are going to freak out and try to give you your money back, which is a sign, right, that you shouldn't have been with them in the first place. Now, most people don't know that.
But we're feeding the enemy.
Yeah.
They're using our money against us. So why are we giving them any of our money?
Yeah.
So,
and, you know, when you see something like an investment club, that's small. Somebody takes a couple $100, puts it in a pool and says, let's invest in something local. Could be a fruit stand. Doesn't matter. Make an investment locally and look for a return locally. Because I'll tell you something. If things go upside down, all economies instantly become local overnight. So it ain't going to matter anyway.
go back to the 1700s where we did trade and barter, you know, we all had a fruit stand and the fish market and whatnot. We're not gonna have the Walmarts and these big conglomerates.
I'm the first to say I'm not looking forward to walking if things go upside down, but it is what it is, right? Trust and relationships of resources. That's not just money, that's experience. In this room tonight, we have so much great experience and know-how. If we are sharing our intellectual resources as well as our capital resources, or we're doing business with the people in the room, things change. Because in this room, in this circle, there are circles outside of this room of these people that have businesses and do things that could use our support. Think practically, think logically, and think about winners and losers in this battle. When we did this for ourselves, we did an audit. It's like, oh God, like we either need to change this or we can't go out and talk to people anymore, right? Because you get sucked in. You get sucked into these things before you know it. You're spending your money at Amazon and doing this, the whole thing. You can't do that. Working together to build financial literacy. If anybody's ever watched or seen anything on Robert Kiyosaki, look, there's some things he gets a bad rap on, but I'll tell you this, nuts and bolts. When Rich Dad Poor Dad came out, it changed a lot of lives, and it's still a really good book to share, and it's still a really good book to read, right? Sometimes you have to go back and learn again, and it's worth doing. All right, small groups, everybody good? All right, let's look at investors. You guys notice the first one? This is a hard one, especially for those of you who are retired. That's why I asked you about who you're in or who's handling your stuff, right? Federal securities are supposed to be the most stable and safe investment around, except for that part where they're not anymore. Not us. You guys can go look for yourself. They're about to try to sell you another round of bonds. You guys hadn't seen that. Boy, that's going to be a winner, huh? And you stretch it out to like a 70-year at like -2%. So this is one of those things that takes a shift. You have to be serious about it, even if you're retired, because if you're not, whatever you're living on is in jeopardy, and whatever you plan to leave to someone else is also in jeopardy. So it's going to take some work. Like I said a minute ago, put pressure on your financial advisors to answer your questions. And if you don't get the answer you want, demand it. Because at the end of the day, your dollars talk.
Yep.
If you say, I'm switching, they're, whoa. Just kidding. What do you want to know? Right? And you'll quickly find out that you're being feed to death. You guys would do better yourself or putting a monkey in a closet and letting them do it for you. Okay. Reposition assets for inflationary environments. We were talking with David brought this up before we got started. He said Mike Adams. You guys familiar with Mike Adams, the health ranger? Okay. Mike Adams said 2 years ago, if you're going to buy something, you have in your 5-year plan, buy it now, because you're investing in your future. And he was right. Comparatively, he got a bunch of things at a bargain, right? You still got time to make some adjustments, because I'll tell you what, it ain't going to get cheaper. So if there's a thing and you can do it before it gets any worse. Okay. Again, and Catherine is on this a lot, local and direct investments of your time, money, and energy. Focus on what you can control, and the work that you do will spread to other people, and they will focus on what they can control. If that works right, we have a network around the country of like-minded thinkers. There's a bunch of technologies and things trying to connect people like that, but the reason they don't work the way they're supposed to is because it's not happening really and tangibly at the local level. Right?
That's where the real power is, local.
How you guys doing? We got one more and then we're going to start to wrap. You guys good? All right. So for those of you who are involved in advocacy and policy, this one's for you. Number one, sovereign state bank. You want your legislators to do something for you, tell them to insulate us against the Fed. It's a gentleman named Kevin Freeman, who has a show called Economic War Room on the Blaze Network. Actually going to see Kevin next week at his ranch. There's a one-day Liberty Pastors Boot Camp. It's a blessing to be able to go and spend time with him. He's come up with the idea of the Texas transactional currency. You guys may or may not know this, but states can actually mint their own currency as long as it's a precious metal, gold or silver.
Yep. Yep.
So what they're working on is the digital Texan. You can go down to the Texas depository, put your gold in. They'll give you a card in exchange. You can use your gold and pay fractionally, and they'll figure it all out for you, right? There's no capital gains on this. So it was revolutionary. It's actually, Rod Martin was one of the founders of PayPal. Now, he's a believer and a patriot. He lives up in the Panhandle. He came up with this idea last year, and it was brilliant. So they shifted it. They would have gotten it through the Texas legislature if they hadn't run out of time in the session. That's how close it is. And every state can do exactly the same thing. If the state governments are willing to take action and say, you know what? The First State Bank of Florida is an option for the citizens of this state, and we can control it, that puts the Fed on their heels. You guys want them to stop spending like crazy, take it away from them. So, go ahead, Bill. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
sells it, I think. He sells it as it's money, our money being spent local rather than.
What?
So there, go ahead.
Go ahead,
The
Mildred.
question that comes, we.
Mhm.
Taxpayers' money will be on that public bank. And that can do loans and lend money to people to buy homes or loans. So where is the security of our taxpayers' money there?
Mm.
I'm talking
Mhm.
And he uses, for example, I guess, what successful public bank.
Mhm.
There's not-
State bank.
They are successful. They are. Oklahoma's doing something similar too. Mildred brings up a great question though, because the whole conversation around insured deposits, we just went through that in March. And what we figured out is the Fed can't insure them either. Right? Did you guys, okay, so quick version, we did a bunch of this, we did a bunch of media on this. Banks had an issue when Silicon Valley Bank crashed, right? The US government, in order to avoid a full economic implosion, I mean, we were about that close to just the entire world imploding, because when the US banking system goes down, the whole world, it's systemic, right? They did it, they got it done on a Sunday night. They couldn't find a buyer, couldn't find a buyer. By Sunday night, they just said, well, listen, we're just going to insure all deposits. Well, now you've nationalized the banking system, right? Everybody follow? So what we found out in that is something we've been saying for a long time. If the banks failed, the FDIC only has about 1.5%.
1.38.
The first 1.38% of people that get their money, the rest, you screwed the pooch.
Yep.
And people started to find that out when they tried to go to the bank. So what do we do to ensure against that and taxpayer money? This is a question that in this process has to be answered. And I'll tell you something. It is the absolute best thing that can happen, because we should have been questioning these things all along.
That's right.
But we let somebody else do it. And you know what happens? Oh, they're not looking. I'll just, right? That's why Social Security is about to run out of money. That's why most pensions around the country are broke. You just don't know it yet because we're not watching. Yes, sir. Sure. Mhm.
Called BNI, Business
Uh-huh.
Network International.
Yep.
And the idea behind it was you hooked up to a group. There was one lawyer was admitted in
Mhm.
that group, one accountant, one insurance man, one whatever and whatever.
Mhm.
And they formed a local conglomerate
Sure.
where we work with each other to provide services back and forth in a way that it stayed all over.
Mhm.
Even though it was called Business Network International, it was a real local thing
Mhm.
that worked real well for each of us who were involved with it.
Mhm.
I think that's kind of where you were leaning when you were talking about it.
Yeah, so Norman brings up a good point. And really the idea for BNI and any of those groups were built on the Mutual Aid Society. Short aside, I'll make this as short and high level as possible. Ben Franklin formed the first junta. That was the first mutual aid society in the history of the United States. That group met for 30 years on Friday nights. They discussed the gospel and scripture. They talked about what was going on in their business and life, and they figured out how they could help each other. And they did. But the other things they figured out is how they could help the community in which they live. That's why we have volunteer firefighters and night watchmen. And those were created out of that one junta 200 plus years ago. So the idea now is coming back around for mutual aid. It's gone through this. It kind of went away. It wasn't popular. Then it got into business. So you got a BNI. Now it's coming back around to say, man, times are tough. We live in the same locale. We believe the same way. We can mutually aid each other and grow our economies and communities locally so that we're as strong as possible. So we can take care of ourselves and we can work with other groups who think the same way.
In reality, we should never have left that.
That's true.
The fact that we gave that up, we gave up the local community. You know, when I was growing up, there was no grocery store. I took my car and I went down to the avenue, went to the fish store market, the meat market, the veggie market, the bodega, and everybody knew me and I knew everybody in my community. We gave up our real power, which was being in community with each other.
Yeah. Bill, Mildred, one thing I want to point out here is number 3. We didn't get a chance to get to it. You guys can't really see with the pointer, but number 3 actually addresses your concerns, right? So in order for something like a sovereign state bank to work, there has to be an in-state custodian and a bullion depository in order for it to work. But these are the things we need to be discussing. Because look, it ain't getting done unless we do it. I got to be honest with you. I'm talking about the people in this room. Unless you're active in the process, somebody will do it for you and it won't work the way that you want. It's human nature. Okay. All right. So let's recap 2 parts. How to become a Sherlock level researcher. Your 3 tips. Pay attention to what they do and what they say. Read between the lines and figure out who gains. Know your foe. We talked about the Financial Times. I expect everyone to get their $1-month dollar subscription and read voraciously and then tell me all the things that are going to happen. Y'all either have my phone number or email address. You should be doing it. Okay, you got that part down? All right, let's go to the second half. Action steps. For those of you who didn't get pictures, we'll do it again. Individual and family actions. You need to take a picture, now's the time. If not, I can come back after we're done or send this to you. Okay. Individual and family actions. Everybody's rushing to get their cameras. That's a good thing.
Are we giving them the?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
want to make sure that if anybody wants to take a picture, they can. Everybody good? Oh, got it? Okay. Small group actions. Yeah, keep your cameras out if you wanted to take pictures. Now's the time. And if you don't, for some reason you missed something, we're recording the presentation. We have the slides. We're happy to share it with you guys. And all of this is going to be in a PDF that you'll actually be able to download. So, investor actions. Okay, good. And the state and local government actions. Who your representatives aren't going to want to see you coming. Boy, I'm excited to see that one. Hope some of you end up on the news. Man. Please, I'll be there rooting for you too. Like, yeah. All right, guys. So we do have an ask before we wrap up. Juliana, you want to talk about the tour and everything?
So RC and I are taking what we just did with you guys tonight on tour because we're really trying to wake up the church. You know, it's the local people that need to start demanding things that are going to happen, that we want to see happen. You know, we've been sitting back and not doing the things that we need to do. So now we're taking We Are The Watchmen on the road because we're saying, hey, as a movement of people, right? Ezekiel 33:6 talks about that if you know something and you don't tell your neighbor and your neighbor gets hurt, you're liable because you now know. So all of us in this room know the chicanery that's going on with our government. We know that politics is just, and what they're doing with the money is just like, you know, we're awake to this. And now what do we need to do as a people? So our real ask is for all of you guys that are going to church or synagogue, we want to get in front of the pastors. We want to get in front of the churches and say, hey, can we talk to your congregation about what it is that we're finding? Because we want everybody to subscribe. It's free. Subscribe to We Are The Watchmen so that we can have a real conversation as a community of believers and saying, you know what, we're at war. Whether or not we want to believe it, we're at war. And what do we need to do to come together because they're winning because we're doing nothing? My husband once said to me, you know, it's like the left side is, you know, they're in the woods, right? And they got the camouflage on. And we were like England with our red coats. We were walking through the field. Like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? How are we going to really fight what's happening here? And the biggest thing we need to do is create the awareness and wake people up because people are in that they don't know that they need to know.
Mm-hmm. How do we move them, right? You want to pull as many people out of Pac-Man's mouth as possible.
Right.
Right.
Well, I'm hoping that we start a wonderful ripple effect, and I hope that people start. If your pastor is not talking about every aspect of your life, like my pastor always says, what part of your life is Jesus not Lord over? And if he's Lord over all parts of your life, He did 2 weeks of sexuality, biblical sexuality. Amen, brother. Because that's what we need to be talking about. The church needs to come together and say, you know what? We don't care what the pastors want to do. A lot of them are on the take.
And it's
right?
okay to say that, by the way.
Yeah. Because that leads the sheep off the hill, right? We need to wake up the church because we are the church, and we can't be sitting back and wait and looking to these people who are doing things that are not appropriate. It's not.
Yeah. So guys, there's a link to all the stuff you saw tonight. The video of this presentation will be up at some point tomorrow, but there's a link to Catherine Austin Fitz and her PDF. It's about 17 pages worth of information. We just gave you guys the highlights tonight. There are links to our newsletters. If you guys are interested in our State of the Economy report for Q2, we just decided to put all that information in one place so you can find it after. Because like I said, we covered a lot and I didn't want to leave you guys hanging. So at some point tomorrow, this video will actually be there so you can go back and watch again if you want to. We'll leave this up on the screen and we want to open up the floor to any questions or discussions that you guys would like to have. So thank you very much.